Commission, Lauren Whitlinger with the Community Development Department. I have a brief presentation for you recapping the matter that has been discussed at a few previous meetings, the on and offshore mooring rental rates in Newport Harbor. By way of background, the tide and submerged lands under the city's jurisdiction in the harbor are often broadly referred to as tidelands. The state statute that grants the lands to the city to manage is the Beacon Bay Bill, and the municipal code and city council policy also govern the city's oversight of these public lands. To dig a bit deeper into the regulations that direct the city's management of the tidelands, first we can talk about the state. Under the Beacon Bay Bill, the grant specifies that the tidelands shall be limited to uses for the general public or preservation of the lands in their natural state. The grant does allow for private use of the public tidelands under an agreement no more than 50 years and in exchange for rent based on the value of the tidelands themselves. Under the state constitution, the lands shall not be gifted to any individual or entity. And in city staff's discussions with the State Lands Commission staff, we further understand this to mean that charging less than fair market value can be considered a gift of public lands or public funds. In addition to the state statutes and codes, the city's municipal code and city council policy direct that the city charge fair market value rent in exchange for private use of these public tidelands. The city has permitted approximately 428 onshore moorings and 731 offshore moorings located in various fields throughout Newport Harbor. The rental rates for these permits were last set by City Council in 2016 under Resolution 2016-17. Since 2016, the rents have been adjusted by the lesser of 2% or CPI. The resolution also allows for reappraisal of the rents every 5 years, which was the subject of the 2021 Harbor Commission Objective 1.3. In 2021, the city selected an appraiser pursuant to a request for proposals procurement process, and an appraisal of the onshore mooring rates was performed. It should be noted that the current rent for onshore moorings is set at $1.67 per linear foot per month. The appraisal report for onshore moorings was first presented to the Harbor Commission at a series of meetings in early 2022. The appraiser performed 6 different types of analysis in that report to determine fair market value rents for onshore moorings, and he placed particular emphasis on the tidelands market rent analysis, the comparable rental analysis, and the dry storage analysis, and drawing his conclusions in the report. The appraisal report concluded that fair market value rent for onshore moorings is $20 per linear foot per month. Shifting now to offshore mooring rates, the current rental rate, regardless of mooring length, is $3.34 per linear foot per month. And an appraisal of the offshore moorings was performed in 2023 and has been presented to the Harbor Commission at several meetings this year. In this report, the appraiser outlines 4 different types of analysis performed to determine the fair market value of the tidelands used for the offshore moorings. In reconciling the different analysis, the appraiser gives the most weight to 2 analyses, finding that the quantity and reliability of the data to be good, and in the comparable rentals analysis and the ratio analysis. The appraisal report concluded that a benchmark rate of $16 per linear foot per month for 40-foot moorings, 40-foot offshore moorings, and tiered the rates based on the other available mooring lengths at a ratio of 30% slip to mooring rates, using the average and median slip rates in Newport Harbor. That concludes my presentation. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the dais for real property manager along Woody Whitlinger? Got it.
No. None.
Commissioner Williams?
None.
I have none at this time. All right, thank you. Next up is the Newport Mooring Association requested 20 minutes to make a presentation. So let's go ahead and move to that presentation, and please understand, whoever does make that presentation is not able to come up and make public comment on top of that. So 20 minutes, and then I will open it up to the dais for questions of the NMA after the presentation. Thank you.
Just waiting for our presentation. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ann Stenton. I am a member of the NMA. Last week, members of the NMA met with members of the Harbor Commission, and we were to discuss the CBRE appraisal and the Netzer appraisal. We were asked to bring forth new information, and I already cut off.
That's a quick 20 minutes.
I'm done. Okay, do I get my 3 minutes back now?
And the mic near you.
Okay.
Are we
Are we
okay,
good?
Jennifer?
Yeah, I'll just.
Okay.
Okay. Can we start over? Am I good? For 20 minutes? Okay, thank you. My name is Ann Stenton. I'm a member of the NMA. Last week, members of the NMA met with members of the Harbor Commission to discuss the CBRE appraisal and the Netzer appraisal. We were asked in that meeting to bring forth new information. On this note tonight, we would like to share with the Commission some recent concerns regarding possible conflicts of interest that have been brought forth to our attention by a mooring holder. If true, these are alarming. We feel the issues need to be investigated by the Harbor Commission, the city, and us prior to any recommendation and vote. So on that note, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Chris Benson.
Please, no applause.
I believe this clicker to work. And it does. All right, everybody, thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity. I don't have a lot of time. There are 60 slides here, so I'm going to go as quick as possible. If you'd like a copy of this, you can go to mooring2024.com and you can follow along on your smartphone. What we're talking about today here is these are the rates that they just presented in that graph. You know, they could have put it in this visual so that we knew, you know, from $3.34 a pop per month per length is, you know, these are the new rate proposed. Look at the difference. Crazy, right? All right, next thing we're talking about, discrimination. Political, use, and economic discrimination. There's political discrimination going on. You know, as mooring holders, only 58% of mooring holders are residents out of Newport Beach. So only 42% are from Newport Beach. You divide that by 7 districts, and we don't really have any political power, right? If you look at that image right there, that's District 1. Most of the dock owners live in District 1. They have much more stronger political power, and that is reason to believe why they have a much better rate. We don't think their rate is too high. We would like to have a fair rate to that. If you guys think 24% to a slip to mooring rate, then let's do 24% of the dock owner's rate. Okay, so let's look at the use discrimination. You know, they had just put on their slideshow that you know, California State Lands Act says no discrimination in rates, tolls, or charges, and they stopped there. Well, there's a few more words there. For any use, right? No discrimination for any use. You know, why are we only looking at the moorings? Why aren't we talking about all other uses? It is very important to find out, and it goes back to the political discrimination, because mooring holders don't have the same kind of impact. This is a dock, and this is a mooring. They sit above the same tidelands. This is the same submerged tideland. If your 25-foot boat is underneath the bridge and it's moving forward, it's still occupying 25 feet of tidelands. This is use, same use. Okay, what do we have on the left? We've got a dock, 25-foot powerboat on the right, and a 19-foot Duffy on the left. That's 44 lineal feet. This guy's paying $143 per year. That's $12 a month, folks. And the mooring on the right, it's got a 34-foot sailboat on a 40-foot mooring. That's $138 a month. They want that to go to $480 while keeping the $12 for the dock. Remember, we're not against what the docks are paying. We would just like you to apply the 24% slip to mooring ratio to those slips. This is the economic discrimination that I'm talking about. Look at the difference. They will keep theirs at 12, and we will be at 480 for a 40. Let's look at that on an annual basis. $5,000, while the owner of the dock is $144. I'll keep going. 10 years, $57,000. 50 years, $288,000, folks. That's a lot of money. This is a serious discussion we're having here. What would be fair? Well, in 2015, there was a resolution that was passed by those council members you see up there, and this is where they talk about approving the dock rental rate where it's at. Okay, this is the, they mentioned this in that last resolution, that this was the slides that were presented to come up with those rates. Okay, here we have the pier footprint. They're just calculating the rate the pier occupies. You understand that, right? It's just the wooden structure. It doesn't include a buffer for the boat, right? Those are the rates, 52.5 cents, bottom right corner. Also, they are getting put in there that you can rent to third parties, top right image, rental to third parties allowed. All right, let's just apply that. How would that look if it was fair? Look at a mooring footprint. The total square foot of a mooring ball is 3 square feet. 2 mooring balls, 6 square feet. Add in a stringer line with 4-inch floats. The total is 20 square feet. That's 20 square feet times 52.5 cents. That's $10.50 a year, guys. Apply that mooring slip ratio of 24%. We're looking at paying $2.52 a month. That's what we should be paying. That's fair. Okay, common rebuttals that you might hear when people compare docks to moorings. Oh, well, property taxes, maintenance, no other use. All right, let's look at those property taxes. Well, in California, due to Prop 13, taxes are not based on what your neighbor's house is worth. It's at the time that the property changes hands, right? So right there on the left, you have 509 36th Street. It's my neighbor's house. She hasn't sold her house in many years, has a dock, just like the one I showed you. She's paying $6,000 in taxes per year. House on the right just sold for $4 million. It's one street in, it doesn't have a dock. This guy has the 40-foot mooring. He's paying $18,000 a year in taxes. So don't tell me that taxes have anything to do with this discussion. There's no difference. Let's look at the maintenance costs. To maintain an already existing pier over 50 years is $10,000. Sure, somebody like my dad might want to replace every plank every 10 years, and it might be more, but the bare minimum is $10,000. I got that information from Eric Langenbach. He's a retired equipment operator in marine construction. He worked in the harbor putting in these piers for many years. He's retired now. Now we've got the required biannual maintenance of a mooring on the right. It's $50,000 over 50 years. Okay? So moorings are more expensive than maintenance. No other use. Well, look, if you took out the piers in front of the houses, you could still install marina-style slips with access between, in public walkways between where the street ends are. So it's BS that there's no other use. These are the same use. That boat is occupying the same land, no matter where it is. Okay? Okay, our story, I'm going to skip through this because we don't have a lot of time, but I'm just letting you know we're veterans, teachers, postmen, pastors. I've got my pregnant wife in the audience here, and we're having our first kid. I want to keep this mooring at an affordable rate so that I can pass this on to my son. Not pass the mooring permit on to him, but the joys of fishing. Raise my son right. Raising this 400 to 500%, you're going to have a lot of fallout. A lot of people are going to have to get rid of their moorings. And you guys have the power to actually set our rate below you might not have the power, but you have the power to make the recommendation to council that you apply it fairly to docks. Next thing, let's go into the Netzer thing. So, you guys met with the NMA and you said, hey, look, you guys need to present some more new information, right? We have an appraisal. It's independent. In Ira Beer, your presentation, you said it was an independent, professional appraisal. Those were your words. Well, does Jim Netzer have a conflict of interest? Let's explore that. If he did have a potential conflict of interest, that would need to be disclosed. That's the Fair Political Practices Commission, right? Okay, so I'm looking in the Newport Beach's, document website. It says where you get documents. I'm trying to prepare for these kind of things. I'm investigating over this over the last few months. And I use Jim Netzer's email address because I'm like, I'll find all the documents I need if I just use this really unique set of words. JamesVNetzer@AOL.com. Okay, what pops up was this letter. Okay, what is this letter talking about? It's dated in 2017, and it's talking about NAC, the Newport Aquatic Center Board of Directors. Well, what are they talking about? What's a Newport Aquatic Center? I don't know what that is. Newport Aquatic Center is this massive facility. It's probably worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Look at that pristine sand front property. They've got docks. There's boats at them. There's boats that are on the beach. This is a big facility. And to let people know, the NAC is operating on a 50-year ground lease with 0 fee. 0.
Preach.
It's a big deal. So, how is Jim Netzer involved in the NAC from this email? Well, let me just go punch that into Google. Oh shoot, Jim Netzer, Secretary of the NAC. He's a board of directors. He's an executive board of directors. This is a very powerful set of board of directors. They have the power to vote out other directors, and that's, if you read the news articles from what happened in 2016, 2017, there was a huge fiasco there, and that happened. So anyways, I said to myself, well, is he still a director? Look at the California Secretary of State website, filing date 1/2/2024. James Netzer. He goes by Jim, his name's James, so you might see those interchangeably. Okay, and I also found the Board of Directors meeting minutes from the Newport Aquatic Center from 2016. Publicly available information that they just left hanging on their website. Oh well, Jim Netzer, he's in attendance, he's a board member. All right. 2/16/2016, top is the date. Jim Netzer is present. Jim is added as a member of the Finance Committee. Okay, what else happened that day? Oh, we learned that Jim is the Facilities Management Chair. He's the chair of the Facilities Management. What does a Facilities Manager do? Well, he's in charge of the facility. Would that be like the ground lease as well? Yes, it is, yeah. Okay, so Jim's getting updates in these meeting minutes that we're going to run through as fast as possible here. Jim updates on the ground lease. It's with the planning and the attorney. Well, who's the planner and who's the attorney? That's a good question. Okay, let's get forward to March. Ground lease has been drafted in an approval process with the city. Okay, Jim gives an update here in April. Jim gave update from Lauren Wooding on lease. Well, who's Lauren Wooding Whitlinger? Or Lauren Wooding? Let's Google it. Laura Wooding Whitlinger. She's the real property administrator of Newport Beach. Okay, let's go to May. Jim reviews the letter from the city. The city attorney is where it's at now. Right? Let's skip forward. I'm going as fast as I can. Okay, this is now August. It is now being reviewed by the city attorney. Who's the city attorney back then? Well, shoot, Google says Aaron Harp, our current city attorney, was the city attorney since 2011. Surely the city attorney must know who Jim Netzer is at this point. The ground lease has made it through city attorney's office. That's October. Let's go to November. Jim is talking about a contractor who's doing a major project in the city, and they're looking for a site to deposit good sand. We know how much it costs when you're dredging to put sand somewhere. Jim says, hey, I'll help you out. We'll love a new beach. You got all that sand, put it over here. So when Jim says that he doesn't really have any interest in the parties of the Newport Beach Harbor, I think, yeah, he kind of has some interest here, and we're going to explore that some further. Also, there's a water wheel that's being installed, and he says, hey, the city of Newport Beach is getting some flack from environmentalists. I'm going to go to the next meeting, and I'm going to propose that you can put the water wheel at the NAC, but give us a new dock. I'll help you, you help me. Nothing wrong there. Okay. Fast forward here to March of 2017. Jim's given an update. Ground lease should have something in 2 to 3 weeks. Wow, this is a big victory. Remember, this is like a $100 million property. I don't know how much it's worth, but it's probably a whole heck of a lot. And if it's a 50-year lease he's negotiating, what do you think that lease is valued at? Jim's being a good boy. You know, he's going to win this. He's going to take this home for the NAC. Right? Oh, shoot, what happens in 2017? 2018? There's schisms over finances and leadership make for troubled waters at Newport Aquatic Center. That's a Daily Pilot article. Orange County Register, Newport Aquatic Center faces questions of financial mismanagement. Okay, so what happens? Our city attorney, Aaron Hart, signature at the bottom down there, writes a letter to the NAC, to the board of directors. That's Jim Netzer. He's one of the board of directors. And what he says in here is, no longer are we talking about renewing the lease. We're talking about a default. There are allegations of financial impropriety, and you guys are getting a free lease. You're supposed to be a non-profit organization. We can't gift lands due to California law, right? So if they're not a public company, if they're private, you can't gift them that free lease anymore. So now we're talking about removing the lease, okay? There's right there highlighted, there's an allegation that Executive Director Billy Whitford made personal use funds derived from a loan to the NAC issued by board member Jim Netzer. It's an allegation though. Let's go to the next slide. Here's the letter in response by the NAC. This is signed by the president of the board of directors. He says up there, if you look at the top, he cops to the loan. He says, yes, Jim offered us a 3-year loan to the NAC that was secured by a promissory note. That promissory note included interest. They claim that the interest payments were donated. Well, in order to donate interest, you would have to accept that as income and then return that as a donation, correct? Right? And also the NAC says, we don't want to bombard you with all the documentation that supports this position, but if you need it, we'll provide it. So maybe they would provide us that loan document. We should know, right? Okay, so let's just look at the conflicts of interest statement from Jim Netzer's appraisal in 2016. Maybe he would disclose that. Well, no, he doesn't. And it's signed by James Netzer and the city attorney, Aaron Hart. Let's look further. Does he put it in his appraisal? And he says, no, to the best of my belief, I certify, I have no present or prospective interest in the property that is the subject of this report, and I have no personal interest or bias with respect to the parties involved. Who are the parties involved? Newport Harbor? Yes. The NAC? Surely that certification is wrong. He says I have no bias with respect to the property or to the parties involved with the assignment. Next slide. Okay, let's just check further. These are Form 700s. You have to fill them out if you're in the city council or if you're a vendor for city. This is where you would disclose any sources of income or anything like that. And you'll see, I've covered up a bunch of them because he just puts the same answer every time. None, 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 none. This one right here at the top, it covers the year 2018, January to December. When was the loan repaid? Do you remember the NAC letter? It was repaid in 2018 as a source of income. He did not disclose. Every step of the way, Jim Netzer did not disclose any of his conflicts of interest. We demand answers. So let's look at the 2023 appraisal. Who did he prepare it for? Laura Wooding Whitlinger. And what did he say? Let's see. Maybe he discloses the conflict of interest this time, right? No, he says, I certify. I have no personal interest or bias with respect to the parties involved. I have no bias to respect to the property that is the subject of this report or to the parties involved in the assignment. I don't know, guys. Okay, here's a staff recommendation. This is a real interesting document, dated October 10th, 2023, prepared by Laura Wooding Whitlinger. She's addressing the mayor and the members of city council. Hey, let's reinstate the ground lease with the Newport Aquatic Center. Interesting. Okay, there's a couple of tidbits of information in here. They're going to renew the lease. Initial term is going to be 30 years with 2 10-year extension options for a total possible of 50 years. And Laura also recommends this. This is the cherry on top. Let's approve a waiver, F7, that they don't conduct an open bid to the public. You know, if you're going to renew a lease on city property, surely you have to go to the public and say, is there anybody out here who might be able to run this property better? Might be able to better group of like children or something like this, or raise more money. And Laura says, I recommend we just skip that process because they're a great cause to this city. And the NAC is a great organization, what they do. I only have a minute left here, so I'm just gonna run through everything. He gets the 50-year thing. Chris Blank happens to be the Newport Aquatic Center president. So surely all the parties involved should know each other is the whole point. If you look at the scope of services for the RFP 2153, you will see the locations to review. This is the RFP for the appraisal. He was told to look at the Newport Aquatic Center. I did a search on that appraisal report. He doesn't mention the Newport Aquatic Center. He doesn't disclose it. And he doesn't look at the rents that are charged there. And he's in charge of the rents that are charged there because he's the finance chair. This is Ira Beer's Harbor Commission thing, presentation from January 10th. And he says they used an independent professional appraisal. I'm about to run out of time here. I got 53 seconds. All right. So let's look at this other conflict of interest we might have. We have a lot of emails between Scott Cunningham, Ira Beer, and Harbor Master Paul Blank, between Jim Netzer, Laura Wooding send these emails as well, and they're all telling each other, hey, we're going to have a meeting, a kickoff meeting, you know, not a big deal. But there's an email from Scott Cunningham, and he sends a Craigslist ad to Jim Netzer, right? I don't know enough about, you know, these laws that govern this stuff, but it's interesting. Lauren saying, hey, this is Jim to Lauren and Paul. He said the phase in we discussed is attached. You know, there's just a bunch of communications here that are really interesting for you guys to read. I don't have time to look at them. But basically, they're all communicating about the lease and what values to look at, what things to put in there, et cetera, et cetera. You can look at all these later if you'd like.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, there's one more, sorry. On March 2nd, Paul Blank was asked to recuse himself, and
Your time's up.
that's fine.
Thank you.
You're going to upset a lot of people if you don't just give me an extra 10 minutes.
Thank you. We talked about 20 minutes.
10 more minutes.
Make a motion to increase the time by 10 minutes.
It's relevant.
Thank you, sir.
Shame. Shame.
All right. The 20 minutes are up.
I'm just, is it time for us?
No, it's not time for public comment.
Okay, very good.
Please withhold from screaming out comments and clapping, please. This is a public meeting. All right. Any questions from the guys? Mr. Cunningham.
None.
Commissioner Young. None. Vice Chair Beer.
None.
Secretary Morrison. Commissioner Spearcheck.
None.
Commissioner Williams.
None.
Okay. All right. Next up is Vice Chair Beer, and he's going to give a presentation, and then we'll come back to the dais again.
Thank you, Chair Scully. First, I'd like to let everybody be aware that there will be no Harbor Commission action taken at this meeting as it relates to the monthly mooring fees charged by the city for onshore and offshore mooring permits. The purpose of the presentation tonight is to provide a Harbor Commission subcommittee report on the subject matter and to receive public input from stakeholders and any other interested parties. However, this presentation will discuss proposed rate increases over a specified or specific rollout period. Public input and feedback, including email and other written correspondence, will be incorporated into the meeting record and compiled for further review by the subcommittee prior to bringing the matter back for a recommendation and vote. So with that, most of this is a summarization from the past 3 or 4 meetings we've had publicly on this subject, and it also sort of duplicates a little bit of what the staff report said, so I will go through it quickly. Great, thank you. So the Harbor Commission has been tasked with the objective to update and provide a recommendation establishing fair market rental rates for offshore and onshore moorings located within Newport Harbor mooring fields. The state of California has entrusted to the city of Newport Beach the tidelands in and around Newport Harbor. The city is obligated to charge fair market rents for the use of these public assets, which include moorings, residential docks, commercial marinas, yacht clubs, and fuel docks. These charges are not taxes or fees, but are rent for the private, exclusive use over public tidelands. Revenue importance. Revenue generated from offshore and onshore mooring rent goes directly to the Tidelands Fund, which among other important functions invests in funding the Newport Beach Harbor Department, the maintenance and enhancement of public tidelands, funding environmental protection initiatives, supporting public access and recreation activities. Charging fair market rates prevents the subsidization of private entities or individuals using public lands. It ensures that mariners mooring vessels over public tidelands pay an equitable amount for the privilege of accessing their vessel while enjoying the use of these valuable and limited resources. Also reduces the burden on the city of having to utilize dollars from the general fund to subsidize deficits within the tideland funds. The deficit for the 2023 fiscal year was about $4.6 million per the Harbor Beaches Master Plan pro forma budget. So we've, as mentioned, had several public outreach on this, starting with the onshore mooring appraisal in March of 2022. The Harbor Commission has been studying, sharing its findings, discussing publicly the subject of updating fair market rental rates charged by the city for both the onshore and offshore moorings over public tidelands. The first 3 regularly scheduled Harbor Commission meetings in 2024 have agendized the subject matter for full presentations, appraisal review, discussion, and public comment. Additionally, a special meeting was held on February 1st, 2024, exclusively for the same purpose. On March 12th, the Harbor Commission Subcommittee met with the NMA to further address questions, concerns, comments, and recommendations. Following pages summarize often heard concerns resulting from feedback at public meetings and through written correspondence. So we hope this is helpful for those with questions. So one of the statements we hear often is that mooring rental rates should not be tied to slip rates. In 2006-07, there was an OC grand jury investigation as to Newport Harbor moorings. Are they held in public trust or for private profit? The final grand jury report included recommendation 6, which reads, establish a regularly scheduled independent appraisal for fair market value of mooring permit fees, based on a percentage of the cost of a slip. The city responded on July 24, 2007, indicated the recommendation will be implemented and a proposed revision will be presented to the City Council for consideration by November 2007. An analysis of mooring permit fees utilizing relevant methodologies is underway. Public access to boat storage over public tidelands and submerged land in Newport Harbor is available by way of utilizing boat slips at public marinas or moorings. Comparing these primary 2 alternatives for boat storage appears to be a reasonable way to monitor and maintain fair market rental rates. Next slide. Another comment that's made is that mooring permit fees are being discriminated against compared to residential and commercial dock owners. Per a staff report, when tidelands are reserved for exclusive use by third parties and not open to the general public, the city is required to obtain rent in exchange for that exclusive use and shall make no discrimination in rates, tolls, charges for any use. The city may charge different rates for different uses when it is supported by an appraisal that makes distinctions in value, i.e. an onshore mooring versus an offshore mooring, residential docks versus commercial docks and marinas, and so on. Obviously, another concern that's been brought out is raising mooring rents over 300% is unfair. So again, as referenced, the City Muni Code requires a regularly scheduled appraisal to be used to determine fair market value. And while a 300% increase seems very substantial, rates have seen only one adjustment over the past 28 years that was pulled back in 2016. Subsequently, the only rate adjustments that had been applied did not even keep up with the CPI index, as they are limited to not exceed 2% annually. The subcommittee intends to recommend an increase to phase in over several years. So here obviously is a big comment, or a comment that we hear often, and that is that the Netzer appraisal is flawed. Well, an independent appraisal prepared by Netzer and Associates has been used to determine current fair market values. Many comments have been raised related to this methodology using the appraisal, such as not considering the cost of accessing an offshore mooring, lack of power, water parking, etc. The appraisal comparison to slip rates is based on the city-adopted Marina Index. That index is approximately 25% below the average slip rates in Newport Harbor. The waiting list for city-owned slips at BYB is 3 to 5 years. The recommended fair market value by the Harbor Commission subcommittee in the appraisal is consistent with rates for similar mooring rentals in Newport Harbor. This is very important. City-adopted Marina Index is approximately 25% less than the actual slip rate in Newport Harbor. Netzer appraisal uses a ratio of about 32% to that index. The Harbor Commission subcommittee is using about 25% less than that. The new mooring rate recommendations are consistent with actual comparable rates in Newport Harbor. And I want to state the last sentence again, that the fair market value is what we're really after here. And you know, we can all sit here and argue details of one appraisal versus another. I'm of the belief that if we had 4 or 5 appraisers in here, we'd probably have 4 or 5 different results. And the methodology that we see from the Netzer appraisal does appear reasonable, and it also conforms to the real world of what's going on out in the harbor.
Please don't speak out, please.
We give you the consideration to speak, and we don't interrupt you. Please provide the same back. This is a very important issue we take seriously. So I'd like you to take a look at this next page. So if you take a look at real comps in our harbor right now, based on a 40-foot offshore mooring length. Currently, the mooring permittees, many of you out here, are paying $3.34 a foot, 133 bucks a month. What's a fair market value for that 2-point mooring in Newport Harbor? A fair market value is reflected by what a very similar product is selling for in the open market, which the appraisals try to describe. But here's the actual reality of what's going on today. So the Netzer appraisal says that's about 16 bucks a foot. The current rate at Balboa Yacht Club for that 40-foot 2-point mooring is $16 a foot. The current rate at the Newport Harbor Yacht Club is approximately $13.55 per foot. Recently, some of you may be aware, the city was able to put together 16 2-point moorings that are offered to the public on a lottery at rates of $13.52 per foot for a 40-footer. As a result of that, it opened up a 90-day window to accept applications. The city received somewhere in the neighborhood of 120 applications for 16 mooring licenses. These licenses are non-transferable, unlike the transferable permits that we're referring to here on these offshore and onshore mooring permits. There is value associated with that. Nonetheless, these non-transferable licenses were oversubscribed, more than 100 applicants to what was available. They have been licensed out. There's boats on several of them now, and there's a waiting list of approximately 100 people. Those 100 people are simply waiting to pay higher rates for the same size 2-point moorings than the recommended new fair market values being proposed or contemplated to be proposed by this subcommittee. We're contemplating proposing a rate of $12.02 per foot for a 40-foot mooring. This is substantially less than what 100 people are waiting on right now for a city license that's non-transferable. Granted, the city licenses do not require that the person on the mooring maintain the mooring. which costs about $1,200 every 2 years, or $1.25 per foot. So you can factor that in. That rate is still...
Please, please, this is a public meeting, come on, I mean, please leave. I mean, just leave.
Please tell the truth.
Please stop talking.
Look, this is a public meeting. You get the respect to speak. We deserve the same. If you're going to continue to do this and interrupt all the other people in this room that would like to hear what this commission has to say, you will be asked to leave. You will be escorted out by this officer in the back. It's the only warning you're going to get. We want to have an orderly meeting. Thank you. So at the end of the day, that's what we're looking at as we believe is a really good comp. This is what's going on in the harbor today. And the subcommittee would also like to say that it is a big increase when you look at it. You say, wow, this is somewhere 300%, 400%, 500%, whatever it is. We empathize with that. And we have to sit here and look at this and say, okay, how do we deal with this? The fair market rental rate, based on the information, the data we have, we believe is substantially higher than what you're all paying today. But we also know it's not your fault you've been paying these lower rates for so many years. So what do? Okay? We have to uphold the Constitution, the municipal code. We have to do our job and provide a recommendation to City Council that we believe is reasonable. So what we've done is we've tried to phase this in the next slide, please, over as long a period as we think is reasonable. So it softens that increase. And if you take a look at this, what's happening is we're contemplating recommending the rates that you could see it will increase to. For example, the furthest column to the right is what the final increase would be. But if you look at the third column from the left, what's currently being paid now, there would be no increase until 2025. And the increase in January of 2025 would be 1/10 of the total increase over the next 5 to 6 years. Then there'd be another 1/10 increase in the next scheduled increase, and then equally over the subsequent 4 city fiscal years going forward. So, you know, as an example, a 40-footer down on the bottom there, you can see, by the way, the current slip rates of $2,000. The rate would go from $133 to $166, and then to $200, and so on. So it's a gradual increase over time. And again, based on the data, the information that we have, looking at what is being paid in the harbor for the same product, with some adjustment, we feel we're coming in very low relative to those rates in a world that we have to say what's fair. So that's the information to date that we have. And as I mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, we're truly interested. Obviously, we'd like some level of support that says, hey, we know these rates are very low. Okay, so we're trying to come back and say we think this is really fair and reasonable. And we welcome your comments. We've continued this process. We've decided, you know, we're not going to bring this to any kind of vote today because this is the first time that we've provided a detailed view of what the rollout might look like over 5 or 6 years. And so because of that, we urge you to provide some real feedback. We urge you to consider, I would urge you to consider, okay, this isn't a subcommittee recommendation, this is just for me. and all the time that's been invested in this and kind of knowing what the data looks like, try to consider the possibility of not digging into so much detail and minutia and breaking down every aspect of any appraisal. Just take a look at what the real world tells you, you know, where you're paying $30 to park a boat on the beach in Newport Harbor when you can't park a car in a parking lot by the beach for $33 a day. Okay, what's reasonable? Ask yourself that, look at what's being paid for those products, and provide us some comments and some feedback. We want to hear it. And once we get all that information, data, emails, we're going to review it, we're going to go back, and then we're going to come back and make a recommendation, maybe at the next meeting, maybe the meeting after, but that's our plan. So I hope you can all respect that. We know this is a heated subject, we know it's emotional, and we hope you understand that we believe that this is reasonable based on the data we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Beer. All right. Any questions of Vice Chair Beer? Commissioner Cunningham?
None no.
Commissioner Yon?
Maybe you could just elaborate a little bit about your phase-in plan and kind of what you used, what metrics you used to increase it over, where you came up with 5 years.
Sure.
And then maybe how you got your percentages, kind of how you divvied up the numbers a little bit. I'm just curious about how you got there.
Sure. I'll be as transparent as I can. An appraisal has to be, or should be done every 5 years per the Muni Code. So in discussing this, any kind of rollout that would go beyond that doesn't seem reasonable because we don't want to have another reset. We don't want to go through this again. We'd like to just have this be a one and done and let it self-govern itself moving forward based upon an index that adjusts based upon fair market value. Again, slip to mooring ratios. We looked at the city mooring licenses, and which was approved by City Council at what the price is for that. We then looked at the appraisals, and not that we don't agree with the appraisal, but we want to try and be consistent with what the city licenses are. There's already a product out there, and again, the proof is in the pudding. That's clearly at or below fair market value. There's 100 people waiting in 90 days, and the list's going up all the time. So that's pretty reasonable. So when you look at the numbers where they come in at, the proposed rates are less than that. Permittees have to maintain, tackle, but on the other hand too, we're not even considering the value of the transferability, but we're not even looking at that. We're just trying to look at a pure, if it was apples to apples, what would it look like? So in saying, what's the furthest that we could reasonably push this out? And we came up with 5 years. And then we talked about it further and said, is there any way to get it even further than that? And we came up with the plan that, well, currently the rates are adjusted annual, first of the year for the moorings, but they're adjusted at fiscal year for the marinas. Why don't we true that up and not have any increase until next year, and then true it to the fiscal year, which over 5 years, it looks like it is still based over 5 years, but we're not starting it, we're kicking the can down the road a little bit. And you know, that's how we came up with, you know, extending it out that far and coming up, and then again, in the beginning, we just want to try and make it as palatable as possible, so we split the first 18 months or so into 2 1/10 increases, and that's how it came to be. And again, up for comment.
And just without me doing the math, the increments between each of the years is even?
Yes.
So you just sort of divided it?
Correct.
equally? Yeah, that's all I need. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Yon. Secretary Marson.
No questions.
Commissioner Spearcheck.
If a permittee were to transfer its permit to another person, then what is the anticipated increase? Does it go to the full rate, or does it graduate at the same rate as the current permittees?
That's a good question. We're proposing that when the transfer, if a transfer occurs, that it has no effect on the price points going forward. It just continues under the same exact program.
Thank you.
Commissioner Williams?
No questions.
Okay. All right. That concludes the presentations for this agenda item. I'm going to now open it up to public comment. A couple of things. One is I'm going to limit public comment to 2 minutes. And there's no clapping and no yelling out. So again, this is public comment on this agenda item on the mooring appraisal and rate increase, and it's limited to 2 minutes.
My name is Barbara Griffith. Real quick, January 10th was the first time that we met. I've learned a lot about Newport Beach politics. Wow. I believe that the Harbor Commission has always had a predetermined recommendation. I don't know why you keep doing these show and tells with us, but Steve Scully, at the last minute, February 14th, you said you were not engaged with the Netzer and that he was proper, he was legal, and these were your words. I went back and looked at the tape, and everything has been done correctly, and nothing has been done on this front. Well, we know that that's not true now. We have plenty of emails to know that the city, the HC, Paul Blank, people were involved in coaching Netzer. We know that now. So, and Ira, thank you for your nice presentation. That was a great presentation, although you cannot ignore the conflict of interest that we have discovered through all of this with Netzer, okay? Here's what we know today. Many believe that the Harbor Commission and some city employees coached Netzer. Why was there an email where Netzer said 8% and someone, well, I will not name names, from the city said, we are thinking 9%. What happened to Paul Blank? What was the settlement with the pier owners in 2015? What was the settlement with the pier owners in 2015? You want to, they're using private piers. If we all want to pay the same amount in this community, then we would not probably say discrimination. Let's have the people that own the homes in front with the private piers pay the same amount of money. We cannot help it that the city gave away all of this land. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, I wish I had a 100-foot mega yacht that I wanted to build a bigger dock, because then I could talk for 45 minutes. My Social Security, which I live off, is not going to go up 500% in the next 10 years. CPI in the last 10 years is 31%. I am assuming that however you determined the price in 2017, 2016, that just can't have gone up 31. It should go up 31%. Incomes, I did some research, depending on where you look, and whether it's the whole country or California, may have gone up 31% in the last 10 years, but the average more like 29%. If this is for the regular person, maybe the rate should go up with people's incomes. And as far as the reports, the Netzer, all of them, it's all BS. Because what you're doing is you're raising rates at what you can get. The super rich are willing to pay $4,000 for a 50-foot slip. The semi-rich see that they can pay $1,000 or $1,200 for a 50-foot mooring. So they feel that's a good deal. But us, just the regular people, still are struggling to have a boat and pay what you're suggesting. And like I said, I live on Social Security. Well, I live on some investments, but I'm a bad investor, so I don't include that. It's mostly Social Security, which In 2017 or 2016, when we bought our mooring, we didn't have a choice. We had to put out money for a transfer. We just didn't have a choice. It was official by the city. That's amortized in the cost of our month. But we could do it, and we did. And we looked at what it's going to cost us with the kind of Article 17 saying it would go up with CPI, which, like I said, has been 31%. Anyway, I'm going to be hurting. Much of my Social Security is going to go to this increase, and that sucks.
Thank you, sir.
Before I start, I got to complain. We were told we had 3 minutes, and we've been 3 minutes. At least those keep me individual. So I would appreciate the 3 minutes that was promised to me. And
2 minutes, Mr. Carl.
I know. So you want to cheat? Cheat. Okay, here we go. Tell me when we're ready so I can start my clock. I got to speak fast.
It's going.
Just tell me when to start. What?
It started.
This is ridiculous. Okay, here it goes. We already presented to you the fact that appraisal of Mr. Netzer is flawed. You know it's flawed. Didn't account for access. Didn't account for dinghy docks. Every other place in the harbor up and down California had the dinghy docks. He didn't subtract for it. In his latest rendition, he says, "Oh, the cheapest place I could find was $325 versus the $400 in the CBRE appraisal." So now you have a span from $325 to $700. It's about the same, no big difference. So he proved CBRE is correct. There should be no increase. Number one. Number two, charging more for different size moorings other than the per square foot violates his own appraisal. If, in fact, you take a look at his per square foot appraisal, which was half of it, it's per square foot. And if you take a look at the bigger moorings, they're actually per square foot. That's high less because of the 10-foot extra. So, also in his other ratio approach, the ratio is actually bigger in other harbors if you compare it to a larger. So you violated his own principles. You recently thrown in this new one, this new approach is a Hail Mary with these 14. You created your own scarcity. You don't let 400 people rent their docks. This is like in a domain. You don't create your own scarcity and say, look, we only have a handful, everybody wants some. Prices go up and then you compare it to that. That's ridiculous. And we haven't had a chance to talk about it because Netzer doesn't even use that, not as his primary. So you gotta use some common sense, and that's what we're asking for. We asked you for a sit down to actually talk about something common, and you didn't say you had any flexibility. Let's have a sit down and talk real common sense.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. Unfortunately, our speaker wasn't able to finish, but I just want to read a couple of lines from emails. From Steve Scully to James Netzer. I like the table with the broken out rates better than the just one rate, December 27th. Jim Netzer to Ira. I'll wait for your comments for you to give me the go-ahead to finalize. Ira, from Lauren Wooding to Ira. Jim and I met this morning to review some additional comments I had to the report. That was January 4th, 2024. We've already shown the conflict of interest. I think that there have been a lot of unethical activity going on here, coaching, collusion. So the beer appraisal is not just flawed, it's disgraceful. And I think it's set at a level that members of this Harbor Commission should resign the position because they have broken the public trust.
Please no clapping. Please no clapping.
Adam Leverance. The California State Lands Commission calculates annual rental rates for the lease of state, tied, and submerged lands approximately every 5 years, the last time being less than 2 years ago. Their current benchmark rate for Orange County is 45.11 cents per square foot per year. Newport Beach data was used in determining that rate. The state's supporting materials use the words fair, equitable, reasonable, consistent, and appropriate to describe that rate. The fee schedule on the city's website indicates that residential piers incur annual rent fees of 56 cents per square foot. Various city resolutions setting past and present rents for title-end users in Newport describe rates as fair market value. The CBRE appraisal report of 2024 is closely in line with what rates are currently for offshore moorings. 40 feet is the predominant offshore mooring in Newport Harbor, and if you divide the annual rent that they're paying by the square footage an associated vessel supposedly drifts over, you get a range from $1.21 to $1.33 per square foot. So a 40-foot offshore mooring permittee in Newport Beach for use of the same state resources as other permittees is currently paying about 216 to 237% more than city pier permit fees and 268 to 294% more than state fees. Harbor Commissioner Subcommittee, which I understand consists of Mr. Spear, Scully, and Cunningham, think that this is unfair and that it would be more fair for 40-foot offshore mooring permittees to pay 435 to 480% higher rates than those other permits. The state of California, the city's very own fee schedule, highly reputable firm, CBRE, are all in agreement on what fair is currently. Mr. Netzer is an outlier. Use the preponderance of data. The state does this. They just did it in 2022, June. You have the data. Don't get to pick the one outlier and disregard the city, the state, and what's accurate and valid. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Netzer's recent memo calling into question the 6% rate of return that CBRE noted in their appraisal report states that there is a, quote, mandated annual rate of return, end quote, of, quote, 9% of the appraised value of the leased land, end quote. And that says the 9% rates are calculated upon the appraised value of the leased land. The 2024 CBRE pages Mr. Netzer disputes, pages 17 and 18, are using the State Lands Commission's formula for a percentage of annual gross income generated by a marina slip. Please don't confuse the basis of 9% of the appraised value of leased land with the smaller state use percentages for calculating annual gross income for boat berthing sites. Even if you bump the Lands Commission's annual rate of return of gross income to 9% and calculate for the most common 40-foot offshore mooring, rent would be $180.33 per month based on the Balboa Yacht Basin's 23-24 peak prices. That would be far more equitable and fair than the obscene increases that Mr. Netzer and the Harbor Commission subcommittee have proposed. A breakdown of the math shows that Balboa Yacht Basin's 2023-2024 40-foot slip rate per month is $50.09. Multiplied by 40 feet, that's $2,003.60 a month. Multiplied 12 months is $24,043 and 20 cents a year, which is the gross annual rate of return per boat berthing site. Multiplied by 9%, it's $2,163.89. Divide that by 12 months equals $180.33 per month for 40-foot offshore mooring rent. The State Lands Commission formula, using a percentage of gross annual income, is logically appropriate to apply in instances where state land produces that gross annual income, as marinas do. And the other question or issue that I had is, if there are 100 people who are on a mooring waiting list, where are they coming from? Are they coming from, do they have boats in slips somewhere that they can't afford any longer? Or where are they? Thank you.
Thankfully, you used the Netzer appraisal again. Using an appraisal from the same appraiser that called out different methods, and then in his last appraisal stated that that appraisal should never be used for this type of appraisal. Pretty much nullifies his appraisal. Then we come up with an appraisal that does it by the State Lands Commission method and comes out with something that's reasonable and in line with all the other mooring fields in California. Charging 4 or 5 times more right now for moorings than docks, private docks, that take up more tide lines when you count the gangway, the dock, and the boats. And don't forget, they got room on the slips usually to rent out for thousands of dollars a month to other folks. And then increasing ours and not theirs is basically unfair. use your conscience, do the right thing, do what's appropriate. You have a very well accepted appraisal from CBRE. Get a third one, but get somebody that's truly independent, and use the State Lands Commission like he did.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. Chris Bliss, mooring owner. I keep hearing the words fair market value, fair market rent. It seems to be a really, really important thing for everybody. And I'm reading here from the, this is the bid that Netzer put into the city to get the job to do the appraisal. And it says right here, this is his words, with respect to fair market rent to charge the mooring permittees, the sales comparison approach is generally the most applicable methodology. In this analysis, the monthly rent being charged for moorings in other mooring fields are compared. Now, apparently, either he didn't do that, or the information got thrown out, or what? Because I got on the phone, and I called up every harbor in California that has moorings. I talked to the harbor masters of every single harbor. And they're all cheaper right now than Newport Beach. And this is before you guys even raise any of the rates. They're cheaper now. Plus, they all come with dinghy docks. The average price that people pay for a 40-foot mooring in California is $1,332. So, I don't, that's fair market value. This is apples to apples comparison. And I don't understand how you're coming up with these numbers, because they're crazy. And one more question, do you guys actually read the emails that we sent? I mean, I just have a feeling that they just sent some in the trash bin somewhere.
Thank you, sir.
I'm a mooring renter, and we have to look back at the whole reason Orange County set up the mooring fields was that so the average boater can enjoy boating in California. Unfortunately, Newport City is a lot more expensive than the average boater can afford. And you can't afford a house here, and we can't afford a slip here. That's why we went for the moorings. If the rent goes up, I just retired 6 months ago, and if the rent goes up, I'm not going to be able to afford it anymore. And I know a lot of people around me aren't going to be able to afford it. Maybe that's what you want, to get everybody out so that you can raise the rents even higher. But I think it was set up so that the average person, person in California who isn't rich, who isn't from Newport Beach, can afford to enjoy boating around here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, but the presentation today leaves me confused. It looks like an eviction notice. Talking about fair market values based on the municipal warnings. There's no comparison, there's no logical comparison. It makes no sense to people on the other side of this bench are not idiots. Something's not right here. Even if you take a look at the city annual budget, it's $440 million. The increased rents revenue might be $500,000 a year. What's the purpose of the increased revenue? Something else is amiss here. Something else is going on in the background. The commission here seems to be already set on these increases, and it seems like there's a deaf ear here. This group is not being represented by this commission. Unfortunately, I think I would vote, if our association has the power to, instead of paying the city these increased rents, why don't we hire an attorney?
Yes.
Maybe they'll listen to an attorney, to what's reasonable. What was presented today, I hear what's trying to happen on the other side of this, but there's an agenda here that's not being spoken. Something's going on in the background that you folks are not letting us know about. Would somebody please tell us what's really going on here? I don't believe anything that's being said here coming this way is, something's not right, something's not true. This doesn't make sense. If you look at the state average, mooring rentals are near or what is being paid now. Why would you increase that 3 or 4 times? Why would a gas station increase their prices 4 times when the neighboring gas station is still $4, whatever it is today, $4? Why would you pay $20 a gallon over here if it's $4 a gallon? Same resources, same producers, same suppliers. Something does not make sense here, ladies and gentlemen. Something is not right.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dale Winson, mooring holder since 2009. Been boating for almost 60 years. Most of that time I've been in slips, renting slips. Now I'm on a mooring. First, I'd like to thank you guys. I know you put a lot of effort to this. I know it's a thankless job. Brutal. Would not want to be doing what you're doing, but someone's got to. I'd like to know a couple things. One, I'm not sure where in the California Constitution you keep referring to that word demands fair market value, so I would like to see where that is specifically. Not sure how I could get that. That being said, let's be real. We can't afford fair market in Newport Beach, ever. None of us can, That's why I'm off a slip. Otherwise, I'd be in a slip. Way better. And to try to make that a percentage of what we get in a slip, and again, I've been in slips way longer than I've been in a mooring, it is so much more inconvenient, so much more difficult. I was just in the pouring rain, downpour, with my wife, trying to get back to the dock, soaking wet, dinghies impounded, parking tickets. I mean, the list goes on about how incredibly inconvenient this is. We love boating. It's what we can afford. We make it work. And if you're going to say this is all tied to what the docks and slips are paying, we're out. We're gone. And it'll just be the wealthy that come in. And by the way, I know those 100 people, as soon as they get on a mooring and they start seeing the real hassle, those people that are waiting in line, on what it's like to actually be on a mooring, they're going to be like, this is freaking nuts. I'm out of here. I'm not paying this to that. They just think, hey, I've got a great place to put my boat. They don't understand the day-to-day reality of what it's like to do boating life on a mooring. Okay, and we just put up with it because we have a passion for it, not because we're a bunch of wealthy people. So, yep, we're the people on fixed income. It's great that you want to raise it over time, but over time, our income is not going up. We can't afford it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Harbor Commissioners. I appreciate the presentation because it does give a little more clarity to how you got to today's recommendation. You got 16 leases that got you a rate and you back into a rate for the rest of the mooring holders. We renovate apartments for a living. When we go to sell a building, we'll renovate a few, and there's always 5 people that'll rent at your rate, and you pass it on to the next guy. And that's what this feels like. I'm here to ask you tonight to have either a peer review done of Netzer's appraisal or hire a third appraiser to offer another value. Because where there's smoke, there's fire. There's no way this mathematically works. I met with the subcommittee last week. I asked for the math makeup on how you get from a 2016 rate to a 2024 rate that is 300 to 500% higher, when the slip rates in the comp set, the preferred comp, only went up 48%. So that's 5% compounded growth, where this is has no buildup and everything relies on the math. And if you're just going to pick an arbitrary 24% of some slip rate to set the market rate for the moorings, it seems like it was backed into based on the 16 moorings that you found in the harbor to rent out. So I would ask that the Harbor Commission respectfully do a peer review or a third appraisal to figure out what the right fair market value is for the moorings.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Dawn Winston, and I'm a mooring holder along with my husband. And the thing that I'm most concerned about is the discriminatory rates. And the reason I look at it that way is that what I'd like to see in terms of comparable apples to apples is the yacht clubs, the marinas, and the commercial use per square foot allocated to docks is fine. And then we can say that square footage, that's what those slips are. Then the mooring and whatever other space you've given the yacht clubs, whatever their rate is for that space, their monthly rate, their annual rate, whatever that is, apples to apples comparison to what our mooring slice of that same tidelands is. That is what the city is charging the yacht club, not what the yacht club is charging the user. I want the apples to apples, what the city is charging us for that little slice of water. And then let's look at all their use of the water that's in the mooring area plus whatever and divide it up so that we're looking at those apples to apples. Does that make sense? I'm hoping it does, because that's the only way we can look at what they're getting charged for their water and we're getting charged for our water. And I think it's very reasonable. And reasonable is what the public, the Tidelands Trust in the state of California wants, is reasonable. That's not fair market. I understand you've got a mandate from whatever that jury was that said why we are doing this way of doing it. But I don't think it's the right way to do it. It's a way, but a fair apples to apples comparison is what I'd like to see. And reasonable is your mandate, not fair market. And accounting for, you can make exceptions, accounting for the fact that we're actually taking care of areas and monitoring areas. And thanks.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, first, I don't represent the Newport Mooring Association or anybody but myself. And second, I protest the shortening of our time to speak. Now, I missed that January 31 meeting. I was being rushed into surgery and chemo for the same cancer my mom is expected to survive for about the next 2 months. Now, the wrongness and discriminatory nature of this, which should be something far outside the decency of the city of Newport Beach, is evident not only in who is and isn't affected, but in the shenanigans like shortening our time and that fabulously flawed self-serving rate analysis and scheduling these opportunities for public comment almost secretively and placed at times working people are unable to attend. I had a lot more to say, but you've cut our time down. So, let me pick and choose. Now, we followed the rules, we spent what we had. Yes, there was a market rate. It's about $10,000 a foot to change the mooring change hands with the mooring, and then whatever you guys are charging. That's the deal we signed up for, and you're changing it like some goon walks up to a homeowner and says, hey, okay, yeah, you bought a house, but I'm going to charge you rent to live in something you already paid for. Oh, and here's my fig leaf, the self-serving analysis. And by the way, a 40-foot mooring off Coronado is $128 a month. They take care of the mooring ball. No $1,600 every year and a half or 2 years. 25-footer in Mission Bay. It's under $900 a year. Okay? It's these fallacious, oh yeah, we should be, well, you know what? If you want to do that, why not compensate us for what we put out to transfer the mooring in the first place under the rules that existed? Give me my 40 grand back, okay? Charge whatever you want.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Jessie Fleming. I'm mooring J23. I'm a liveaboard. We've been in the harbor since '87, on and off. But what I wanted to bring up tonight is that you said you can get these rates in Newport Beach. Of course you can. I manage many boats for people, and a lot of owners are like, get me on that list. It's a third of the price of what the slip rents are. But the mooring, as Dale said, is not an easy life. It's a life we choose, though, and it's a life we love. No parking, no amenities, no bathrooms, whatever. But the point is I don't live in Newport Beach. I live in the state Thailand waters. I know you are in charge of overseeing those and making sure it's state fair. Not Newport fair rates, it's state fair rates of what it is everywhere else up and down the state for those moorings.
Right.
We are living on Social Security. If you raise this, that takes away half of our income. I don't want to give you the whole sob story of, you know, we help our disabled daughter and how much insurance is and how much this and how much that, but I'm telling you, we would not be able to live in Newport Beach any longer. I'm putting a survey together. I already know just in my area, 5 rows in the J field, 10 people on Social Security and disability that say they would have to move. And after this survey goes out to all the mooring holders, we will have a number in the next meeting of how many people you are kicking out of this area, because basically it's social engineering, bringing in the rich that can afford. And it's just not fair for us who have been here and we've been good citizens out there. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hi, Jared Perrin. I'm a mooring permittee. I just wanted to respond briefly to a couple of the comments that Vice Chair Beer made during his presentation. I think you mentioned that if you get 5 different appraisers in the same room, they'll give you 5 different opinions. And I guess if you feel that appraisers are so fickle and could go in any one direction, then it probably undermines you relying on one single appraiser to make, you know, the point for the recommendation that you're going to make. And if that's the case, it might behoove you to utilize more than one appraiser as you come up with your recommendation, especially one that could be viewed as absolutely independent, and you know, that might mitigate, you know, the recommendation being based on solely one appraiser. That was the one point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bob Thurn. P77. This is your constituent right here. It's my mother. She's 85 years old. She's at P77 for more than 50 years. I work in the harbor. I'm a business owner in the harbor. If there's a moment of doubt whether or not it's raining criticism on the show tonight, it has to be there because everyone is asking for questioning independence. They're questioning a dramatic increase, which we've seen to be sliding through numbers like 300% and 400%, as if someone that's on Social Security or in retirement could afford 100% increase. They can't, we can't, we won't. I mean, that's really what we have to come down to. So addressing the concerns one by one, even though they're coming at us from all angles, might not be the best approach, but it's a slowdown to say, look, there's a problem. Clearly everyone is communicating the same thing. Let's address independence in a concrete way. Let's look at the issue of even a phased-in approach. Is that still, what sort of rationale is there behind that? Is it your rationale? Is it my rationale? Is it her rationale? But right now we're struggling with a lack of communication because we didn't know that we were going to get slid into this as shore mooring owners with the lot. And everyone seems to be approaching this as if they're all the same, but they're not. Right? She's the one that paints the post. She's the one that updates the line with my help. She paints because she likes to be out on the beach and do that. This is what we're talking about when it's, the fabulously wealthy. I think not. It's just boaters and people that love this community, so much so that they're willing to be disagreeable at times to get heard. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Laura Mitchell. My husband and I have a mooring permit in Newport Harbor. It is new for us. This has been a long-term dream that we've worked really hard for financially to be able to afford a boat and a mooring near the place that we live. And this is the story other people have been telling. It's frustrating to see that slipping away. There's a lot of emotion there. I know you guys get a lot of emotion. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for drawing this process out. It was a pleasure to come here tonight and find out it's not a voting night. We still have an opportunity for conversation. And I think it's important to keep having this conversation because this is a big constituency of people who are angry and upset. And it would be nice to see us coming towards greater resolution. I echo what many people in this room have already said. It would be lovely to see a truly independent appraisal. The baggage that the Netzer appraisal carries with it makes it hard for me as a newcomer to these politics to see that as truly independent. I also wanted, before my time is up, to read from the State Lands Commission of California. The website has a mission statement. The California State Lands Commission provides the people of California with effective stewardship of the lands, waterways, and resources entrusted to its care based on the principles of equity, sustainability, resiliency through preservation, restoration, enhancement, responsible economic development, and, the last words here, the promotion of public access. The rate increases even phased in that we saw tonight do not promote public access, and they are not, as I see it, part of equity. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Patricia Coomans. I'm on H813, Herman's wife, the one that was very upset talking earlier. I'm upset about Title 17. We went to so many meetings to get that worded right. And rules kind of were flip-floppy through the years in the harbor. But when Title 17 finally got written and the rules were written and when boats came available, they were supposed to be, we were told, auctioned off, not lotteried off. So there's going to be a huge line in the beginning. They don't have to put up 40, 50,000 up front. Of course, there's going to be a lot in the beginning. I don't know how long those boats are going to stay there because this is going to affect boat workers that need boats to come to our boats to deliver water, pump out. Now they have to, their rates are going to raise. It's going to make all boat workers, which is almost impossible to get someone to wax your boat these days because they have to have a boat. Their rates are going to go up. It's going to be even harder to get boat workers to come out to your boat. I don't know how many of these new boats, if they're going to wealthy people, how much they're going to put up with it. No parking in the summer. It costs over $600 now for a parking pass to park on 15. I don't know if you're aware of that when you're adding in the cost of not only our fees for the mooring, but also parking and such, and the maintenance and stuff. But I just feel like I've been lied to. When I got my mooring, the city walked me through the procedure. The buyer and the buyer and the seller were there. They told us we had to do this. They documented it right there, notarized it right there for us, so it would make it easy for this deal to happen. Told us the rules, and then Title 17 came up, and there it is. We're good, we're safe, cost of living rises, this is where we're gonna retire, and this is where we planned. We're liveaboards now, and it's home. We've got a lot of neighbors that I've known from cruising days from 30, 40 years back. I just feel like we've been lied to. Title 17, how can all these changes just all of a sudden happen with no meetings like we had to make Title 17?
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Wade Womack. And I passed out a green flyer to the crowd. You guys have it. It's white. On one side is the variance report, and on the back side is 2016 Netzer's appraisal remarks. So if you go to the back side, in the square, the last sentence says, this analysis, and he's referring to the mooring to slip ratio, is given little weight in the final reconciliation because it is judged to be not reliable. So I think this doggone mooring to slip ratio is a problem. And if you go to the other side, the variance report, the numbers don't really lie. You look at the 40-foot line, I have a star next to where Netzer believes the mooring rates went up from 2016 to 23. He believes they went up 41%, which is a little more than CPI. That makes sense. If you slide your finger to the right on the 40-foot mark, he says mooring rates went up 448% in the same time period. That is unreliable. Heck, that's what he said on the back. The big problem here is he switched methodologies to the mooring to slip ratio, and that's what's broken here. And I don't know how else to explain it. And I'd like to say one other thing, is your recommendation seems to want to peg the rates to Balboa Yacht Basin slip rates. Well, heck, there's a lot going on over there. They've been pumping up the rates 20% a year over the last 2 years, and now they're looking at privatizing it, from what I can tell. So those rates are going to skyrocket, and if you peg us to those, it's going to be more than the 500% fee increase that we're looking at, because those rates are going up, and we're going to be tied to those. So that's a big problem, and all the other titling rates here have a 2% or CPI. It's kind of Prop 13. Newport's kind of a tax-friendly city, and if you switch to the Balboa Yacht Basin rates, we will be charged unlike every other titling rate that gets capped out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jordan Clare. I had a lot to say, but I'll just try to concise it here. So the commissioners inquired, we were told that by the harbor master, Paul Blanc, that parties purchasing mooring permits have not been informed of potential forthcoming immense increases in rent. Harm caused by this lack of transparency could be somewhat mitigated by acting in accordance to what has previously been defined in the city as permissible. That is, adjust the rent of only those individual permits that transfer ownership following each appraisal. So, to me, this hits home in a way because I've wanted to sail my whole life. It took me 52 years to get there. Bought a sailboat, bought a mooring. It all seemed reasonable. I had to come out of pocket 30 grand to pay for this mooring, and then I have to come up with the permit fees and all that. So I'm barely in this 6 months now. And I feel like it's like that dream is being pulled away in a way because of such dramatic change is going to happen with the rents. So this does two things for me. One, it's going to make it cost a lot more if I decide to continue with this dream. And number two, it's going to make it harder for me to even get out of my mooring permit because the next person absorbing that is going to have to pay so much more for that mooring space. And I'm not doing, not coming to you saying that I'm poor and I can't afford it. I can afford it. And I can afford a rent increase. As a matter of fact, my whole family, my wife and my father, we love it down there so much. We're looking at purchasing property on via Lido Peninsula Resort, which is directly in alignment with our boat. We could basically swim to our boat from there. So our whole lives are changing. And
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Hello guys, my name's Carter Harrington. I just have a couple questions from your presentation, which I think all of us want answered. How can you compare yacht club moorings because they have parking, shoreboat service, and dock service? And then on your Excel analysis you talk about being fair, but how can you objectively not include increases for the yacht clubs, but use their rates for comparison? Question in the room, where is Paul Blank? And I paid $1,000 a foot for my mooring, and the list of people waiting to rent moorings did not. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
As I mentioned in the last meeting, we've had these situations where we've got now apparently 2 minutes to talk, and you guys are never going to respond. There's not a give and take. When we were told about this meeting, we were told to list our questions and you would address them. That has not happened. Is it going to happen later on after we're done talking? Or are you going to go down all these letters that we wrote and made specific questions? Because this just feels exactly like the double mooring program. You listen, give us the same presentation next month, same presentation next month. This just sounds like you guys are at the end, this is the end game, and you're going to turn it over to the city council. But all of these
discriminatory charges. No one has explained why a homeowner can make bank on his much less expensive dock. How does, a fuel dock pay 88 cents? Like he isn't making money off of that dock. We cannot even loan our mooring to a friend for nothing. What is that all about? Why would there be such a rule that we're paying more than everybody else, but we cannot rent our mooring out to our friends? People accuse us of making money on the deposit that we had to put down. Those $1980 are not worth the same as the dollars that we're going to get when and if we sell this. And it was made very clear by one of the commissioners on a live mic, all we got to do is raise the rates. They won't even be able to sell the moorings. That transferability is going to go away. That's premeditated. That is, I believe, something that's going to be litigated. And now you really put us in the corner where all of us who haven't chipped in on the lawyer, we will.
Thank you, sir.
We all know, and it's very clear that there is a corruption happening right here. There is people sitting here that are corrupted. And it's clear. Harbor Master Blake is also missing. So we're gonna bring you guys to the court, to be honest. It's not gonna keep going like that. Gonna bring you guys to the justice. And this is my $7,000. Thank you.
Please no clapping.
We should all have a flag on the road.
Scott, can you please leave?
And let everybody know.
Please, leave.
There is a corruption happening in the city. Thank you.
If you keep it up, we're going to have to escort you out.
Hi, Don Winston. The thing that I didn't mention is the Newport dock owner of a 40-foot slip.
Excuse me,
is
you already
paying more.
spoke. I'm sorry.
Yeah, is paying less than.
I'm sorry, your 2 minutes are up. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Is there any further comment?
Jim Palmer, I had my mooring for 21 months now, and I believe in those 21 months this is my 12th meeting to discuss various issues with my quiet enjoyment of my permit. I have nothing further to add other than to express my continued opposition to the activities that are taking place in the streamer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment on this agenda item? Okay. Anything from the dais? Anything further? Commissioner Cunningham on this agenda item?
None.
Commissioner Yuan?
None.
Vice Chair Beer?
None.
Secretary Marston?
None.
Commissioner Spearcheck?
None.
Commissioner Williams?
None.
Okay. All right, well, thank you all for your comments. There's been quite a bit said tonight, and we will take all of that into consideration and look into everything. There was a few comments made about harbor commissioners influencing Mr. Netzer's report and the emails that were achieved from Public Information Act. Mr. Netzer produces a draft report, and we reviewed the draft report and made recommendations such as formatting, and I made a recommendation about changing the rates from a single rate limit to a scheduled rate limit, just as the marinas do. And honestly, in my opinion, I think it's fairer for the smaller boats than it is for the larger boats. And that was my contribution and opinion. And that was it. So again, thank you for your comments, and this will most likely be on the agenda in our next meeting, and we are not going to take any further action this evening. And we're going to take a 5-minute break before we go on to the next agenda item. Thank you.